Well, what do they say? A win's a win. Well, I guess that's true, and that's the way to have a glass half full take if you're a West Virginia Mountaineers fan, as WVU kicked off their season in Morgantown with a victory, a win over JMU, James Madison University, 20-13. It was a win. It wasn't impressive, but it was a win, and also kicks off the Neil Brown era with a victory for the Mountaineers. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and this is another edition of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm coming at you from downtown Pittsburgh in our Pittsburgh Sports Live studios, and this broadcast is made possible thanks to one of our newest addition to the Now family, WV Sports Now. WV Sports Now entering their first season of coverage here as a member of the Now family. And they did a bang-up job in week one, a better job than I think the team did on the field. But regardless, as I kind of help run this channel and everything else I do for the Now family, I'm an alum of the school. So I'm going to join here with the WVU coverage here for the football season, also probably basketball season, add some of my shows, add some of my coverage to what they're doing, make even what they're doing as well as they're doing it even that much better and add to it. And that brings us here to kind of recapping week one, heading into week two, and kind of giving the pulse of Mountaineer Nation here after the victory over JMU. Now, West Virginia, again, they got a win over JMU, okay? It wasn't impressive by any means. Again, 20-13 over JMU, who is a number 2 ranked team, but a number 2 ranked team in a lower classification. Okay, we're not talking about D1 or whatever you want to, what it's called now. They're number 2, but they're not a major conference. They're not a Power 5. They're not even on a UCF type of level. And that's a little troll job for my UCF fans. You're going to get me on Twitter probably for that one. But they're not even there. And I understand that WVU was only favored by 5.5, so they actually did cover the spread. And it was a new era. And I did a whole show a week or so ago. You can find it on the channel, in which I made it clear to temper the expectations on the Neil Brown era. I said it. Here it is. It's on WVSportsNow.com. W fans need to temper expectations. That was my debut broadcast of Mic Drop for WV Sports Now. In terms of Neil Brown's the right guy for the job. I mean, everyone says that. Everyone who's been around him, it certainly feels like he wants to be there. He fits the mold. He's won. This is certainly the next progression for him in his career from Troy to here. He's young enough. He has the right mindset. I think his systems will even work in conference. He's right for the job. But this team is coming off of a couple years now where after a lot of wins early on in the conference switch from the Big East to the Big 12 with Daniel Holgerson and winning the Orange Bowl, etc., they've had some big wins still over Texas, for example, with the I'll do it on the broadcast here. Horns down on that victory. But they've also had some bad losses, like, say, Oklahoma State, which was really the bad loss. Not Oklahoma, you expect to lose to them, but Oklahoma State, killing years, Iowa State, those bad losses that ruined years before they could even really get started, or after a big win, you'd follow it up with a bad loss. All I tried to say with that broadcast there to temper expectations, because it's a similar roster. You actually lost a lot of players in terms of Greer, Sills, etc., but even Askew Henry from the defense, Miles Sanders, etc., that this is a younger team now. They're learning a new system, learning a new guy, learning a new head coach. Neil Brown getting his feet wet in a major conference that he wasn't dealing with before. Tougher competition. There might be a year of growing pains, and that might lead to 3, 4, even 5 losses in similar type situation to what you had last year and the year before. So all I'm saying is Neil Brown's the right guy, but temper expectations. That's what that show was about, temper expectations. Now, with that said, because I got this back and forth on Twitter from people who reacted to that saying, you said temper expectations, then how are you mad they barely beat JMU? Well, with that said, I still would expect, even if you don't win by more points, because that was the spread, okay. JMU is a good team for their level, for sure, and they're hungry and they're motivated to go to Morgantown. But the talent level, the talent discrepancy is certainly light years away, and that game gave you a lot to take away from in terms of what WU needs to improve on. Or they're going to have more than just tempering expectations. They're going to have a legit bad year. They might be under 500. They could be 500 at best. They could miss a bowl game if they don't get these things corrected. And that's what you see from just that first matchup against JMU, where they got to win, but they were trailing in that game. and they had to show their composure, what they did. Neil Brown's proud of that, but it wasn't a game that left you too excited about getting further victories or upsetting anybody or, any conference title or anything more than just a regular bowl season. But if you don't fix things, it could be a missed bowl year, it could be 500, it could be worse than where it's been the last 2 years, even though I do, again, think Neil Brown will right the ship and turn it around in the future. But right now, that's not looking to be the case. So what I'm going to do here is kind of, and Skylar already did this on the website, but just takeaways from the game, kind of go at his article, look at the takeaways from the game, how things and if they can be improved upon, and then lead into what you're really going to expect from Missouri, because it's national TV. There it is. There's the news. West Virginia against Missouri. It'll be at Memorial Stadium. It'll be at noon, so that's a noon kickoff for you college students, unfortunately for you. And it'll be nationally televised on ESPN2. And Missouri's coming off a loss. So if you're in comparison to WVU and Missouri, West Virginia's barely beaten JMU, who I feel like should have beat a little handily, but they didn't. They get a victory, though, against JMU, whereas Missouri's coming off a loss against Wyoming. I think it was 37-31. Yeah, they put up points, but so did Wyoming, and that's not a Power 5. They should have won that game. And yes, it's an SEC team, so it's a major conference opponent. That's a conference that's better than the Big 12. Now, before I get into conference wars, the Big 12 is a good conference. The Big 12 plays no defense, but it's a good conference that always produces the Oklahomas of the world, Texas years further back. The Big 12 is a good conference. I wouldn't say it's anything close to the SEC level, and that's just the truth. At least that's not the body of work that's been put out the last 10-plus years, okay? The SEC doesn't give you the offense the Big 12 gives you, so that's going to be kind of see what happens there between these two teams. But West Virginia's still learning their offense, where Missouri's is better, at least what they put forth in week 1. And the SEC usually gives you a solid defense, but West Virginia in the Big 12 usually does not. We'll see. This is again Missouri. This is again a team that is coming off of an upset. So they're coming off of a loss, but they're still an SEC recruited, talented team. And they're still 37-31. So I was correct. They're even going to be hungrier in that game. And now getting a home game against West Virginia. And West Virginia needs to work on a lot of things that even this is Missouri coming off a loss. But this is an SEC team. You might not gain much because of their record, especially if they're 0-2 after the game. They already had a loss to a non-Power 5 team. This isn't like NC State, which is probably their best out-of-conference opponent this year. Most of the major in-conference games will be their toughest opponents if they can beat Oklahoma or Texas again. Those games will be the games they need to say, that's my win to hang our hats on. Oklahoma State looking for revenge. But out of conference is NC State, who they didn't even get to play that game a year ago because of the weather and because of a hurricane. But otherwise, you're looking at Missouri. And this was scheduled years ago. So Missouri with Michael Sam, for example, was a better team, especially defensively. They were better. They had spurty years in the SEC where they could be a contender. But the SEC has been the powerhouse conference over the last 10-plus years, 20-plus years. Yes, there are years for the ACC. Yes, there are years for the Big 12. Yes, there are years for other conferences. And everyone likes to argue that whenever it happens. And then crap on the SEC because Alabama may have one game where they don't win by 2 touchdowns, or maybe every now and then teams may get upset. And Alabama even lost the game a couple years ago and then loses in national championship games to Clemson. And Clemson is the best team in the country by far. And they kept on proving that with what they've done against Alabama and what they've done with their overall schedule. Not saying they have the hardest schedule in the world every year, but they're the best program, even ahead of Alabama right now. They decided it on the field, and Clemson won. That's ACC versus SEC. But it's very possible right now, with the way the conferences are looking, that still, and it's been this way, the ACC maybe has the best team. There's powerhouse teams in other conferences, okay. The ACC might even be top. The ACC is top-heavy. The Big 12 might be top-heavy. The Pac-12 is trying to kind of turn it back on. The SEC has Bama, of course, always top-heavy with Bama. They're a giant and a behemoth in the league, even or in the all college football, even if Clemson's better than them. But They have the depth. And Missouri's there. They're coming off a lot, but Missouri is about the depth, okay? Missouri is part of that depth. It goes all the way down to Missouri. I mean, they've had the depth over the past 10 years. That's why it's been the best conference. So you're still dealing with an SEC school, so you still need to kind of fix these things to actually be able to not have your season really ruined. And in terms of a major takeaway in that JMU game, number one, okay, how Kendall looked. All right, now, and we're going to the numbers here. Yeah, there it is. Austin Kendall, 27 for 42, 260 yards, 6.2, 2 touchdowns, no picks, QBR of 65. Okay, not an incredible game for him. But he's a transfer. He's coming in. It's his first start for West Virginia at home. A lot of pressure, new head coach, even though obviously it's new for both of them. So it's a whole new era with him and Brown versus Holgerson and Will Grier. There's not too many months since that was the case for the Mountaineer fans. A lot of pressure, a lot of hype in the offseason. He won the job. He deserved it. He had to be the guy with all the hype around him and the fact that he was more of the veteran with more experience. But those numbers are indicative of a bad start to the game. But then showing your composure, and this is maybe positive from the game even though it was JMU, showing your composure to turn it on, keep your composure late, get a late touchdown drive, win that game, 27-42, 260, 6.2 yards per, 2 touchdowns. Didn't throw any picks. That's good, obviously. No mistakes, at least, from him in terms of turnovers. But I think showing his composure was a big deal. Skylar touched on it. That's a big deal, okay? Showing his composure. He showed it was JMU again, but he showed his composure, and that really, really became evident throughout that game. So we'll see what he does against an SEC school, even though they're coming off a loss. But it's Missouri. It's an SEC school. That's going to be different than JMU. We'll see what happens if the Mountaineers get down in that one. But I think showing his composure, that was a good first start, a first victory for Austin Kendall there in that first game. That's a positive in terms of a takeaway from the game. But then here's the negative, and here's the negative. I was nice starting it with a positive early, but here's a major negative. The running game. Okay, just in general, the running game. Skylar touched on run blocking. Yes, run blocking needs to improve. The tight ends need to block more. The overall team needs to block more. The offensive line needs to protect their quarterback as well as block better. And the running backs need to, and there's several of them there, they might need to figure out who's the guy. They might need to figure out their roles and diversify it from there, because right now, Martell Pettaway finishing with 20 yards on 9 carries, that being your leading rusher, that's a problem, okay? That's a problem. The running game was almost non-existent. And yes, well, we'll get there in a second. That's the receivers. And yeah, that was, well, we'll go there. There you go. 74, 58, 32. That's another thing Austin Kendall did well. He spread out the rock, okay? Ended up just shy of 3,000 yards passing. I know he threw a lot of passes, more than you'd want actually him to throw, especially to start a year. But he spread out the rock, so that's good. But back to the running game. Martell Pettaway, 9 carries, 20 yards, average of 2.2 per. Kennedy McCoy, 11 carries, 11 yards. So he had the most carries, just only 11 yards. More carries than Martell Pettaway. 3 yards. Austin Kendall, you're including him in there. He had tried to have to run around a few times, but didn't really go anywhere. Martell Pettaway, 9 carries, 20 yards, leading the day. Kennedy McCoy, 11 carries, 11 yards, an average of 1 per. Okay, that's leading the day. That's leading the day on the ground. This doesn't come with any type of advanced analysis here, guys. You all know this already. It's pretty obvious. You need to be a pretty balanced team to win. You need to be a pretty balanced team to win when you're a middle-of-the-road major conference program like West Virginia. This isn't Oklahoma. This is West Virginia. You need to kind of be able to be balanced. Because when you're balanced, it does several things. It takes pressure away from your quarterback, who is inexperienced overall, at least, even more experienced than the rest of the guys on the roster, inexperienced overall in comparison to other quarterbacks maybe in conference. It also allows you to churn the clock and hold possession, where you don't have to be either you're scoring quickly or you're losing the football quickly and then it's back and forth like an 8-ball. It's like ping pong there against JMU. Controlling the clock, having possession, that can help you. And maybe what Neil Brown needs to do, and I know that was probably rough to do against JMU because they were trailing and it was JMU. And Austin Kendall, again, he held his composure and they were able to come back and win. But you got to keep going to the back, okay, no matter what. And this is, I cover the Steelers. This is sometimes what Tomlin gets into. He wants to have a feature back. He has others that he can rely on, but sometimes they get out of it. There were some games with James Conner last year where they didn't give it to him enough early on. He wouldn't get any continuity. There wouldn't be yards. They wouldn't be there. He rely a lot on Ben. Ben threw the most passing attempts he's had in his career last year. He threw a lot of yards and TDs, but he was very, very inefficient. Made a lot of mistakes, more turnovers. You don't ever want to be having where you're throwing the second or third most pass attempts in all of football. And that's what the Steelers had with Ben. That's right now what the West Virginia Mountaineers have with their offense. That's at least what you have after 1 week in terms of 11 carries, 9 carries. I mean, they all didn't combine, and you can throw in the quarterback here. They all didn't even combine for 30 carries. And maybe you got to keep going to them. Maybe you got to find one guy. Maybe it's Petaway. Okay, maybe it's McCoy. Whoever it is, maybe you'll find out through practice. Maybe you'll find out through a game or two. Maybe Missouri, they're a major conference opponent. That could be an okay win for you, even though no one's going to say that's a major win to hang your hat on because they're a struggling program. But still, it's SEC. It's above JMU level. And maybe you use that game to figure it out or whatever. But you got to keep going forward on the ground. You can't just abandon the run game. And they weren't trailing by that much. Yeah, they were trailing and he had to come back and there was a composure. But it's not like you're down by 20. Where you need to keep going to the running game. No matter what, you got to keep going to the running game, do the Mountaineers, to add a balanced attack. They need a balance. Now, he didn't make any mistakes in terms of turnovers, but you need a balanced attack to minimize turnovers, to take pressure off the quarterback, to churn the clock. I mean, which would help the defense, get them off the field more often. You need to keep going to the running game. They need to figure out who's their guy, even if it's a combo, whoever it is, you need to keep on going to them. Yes, the yards weren't there. Yes, the yards per carry weren't there because the running game was a major problem. But you need to keep going to the running game. You need to keep going to it on the ground. You can't abandon it, especially in a close game. And the run blocking, which, again, is touched on WV Sports Now, is part of that. And maybe that's why Neil Brown didn't feel comfortable, because the run blocking wasn't there. That's tight ends. That's the offensive line. Protected the quarterback, but not the run blocking. Maybe they didn't see it being there, and that's why he didn't go back to it, but you need to go to the running back more. That blocking obviously needs to improve. And then kind of just going down here through the wire, obviously defending the read option was a problem for the Mountaineers. They do have an issue with that. They've had an issue with that for years. That's nothing new. That's almost every Mountaineer fan is aware of that. That's no matter whose defense that is, that's been a problem for the Mountaineers. The 3-3-5, that defense for the Mountaineers, that's been their bread and butter defense, but it does allow some concerns for read option quarterbacks. And it goes you back to Missouri, because Missouri, again, they're a major conference opponent with talent. They are able to hang up points, even though they don't bring necessarily the defensive ability that the rest of the conference would. They are a struggling program right now. They're not where they were with Michael Sams a few years ago. And that defense doesn't necessarily give you the pass rush that it would have back then. So I feel like this is a win for the Mountaineers, and it certainly should be as you get into a harder schedule as we go through things, especially in conference, and there will be those hiccup games. And as I repeated, and as I said on a prior show on WV Sports Now, as well as Pittsburgh Sports Live in our family of networks, WV fans need to temper their expectations for Neil Brown. It's his first year. It's a new program. It's a new way of life. It's a new system. He's the right fit, but it could be very similar like Daniel Holgorsen in the last few years in terms of some upset losses, 3 or 4 losses, 5 losses. It could be very, very possible. You just don't want to let the year get out of the hand and have it be worse where they're missing bowl games. I believe in Neil Brown for the future, but maybe not the present. And the JMU game only makes that more and more the situation for me. That only kind of supports what I've been saying going into the year, more and more off JMU. There's a lot to improve on. Missouri, though, is a major conference opponent. It'll be a solid win, even though they're a struggling program if they can get it. If they lose, it's going to be a major problem, probably, because they're going to be a team that will lose several more. But that's a defense I think yards can be put up against. My only fear is, and as I said through this whole show, WVU might feel like they can pass against Missouri. They might feel like they can get over that Missouri secondary. They might feel like, if you look at these passing numbers, Austin Kendall, 260, 27 to 42, 42 pass attempts. It's a lot. And all these receivers who got action, Bush, Simmons, James, Ryan, Campbell, McCoy doing it on the ground, but also through the air there a little bit, so maybe he's the guy. All the way down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different receivers caught a pass with at least a reception. Okay? That's great. I mean, that's Tom Brady type of stuff. That's diversifying the offense, getting everybody involved. That is good. That's what you want for your starting quarterback in a major conference. Only fear is they're going to be a little too confident with that part of the game. The fact that he can spread out the rock, the fact that the yards were there with all those pass attempts, and get away from the running game even further. And you don't want to do that. Okay? WVU needs to get that running game going. They need to find a guy. They need to stick with him. Even if it is a combo, they need to find 2 guys, then stick with those 2 guys. It can't be 3 or 4. And they need to go to the running game more often and fix that run blocking. Obviously a big deal. But regardless, they need to keep on going to the ground. They cannot abandon it like they kind of did against JMU. And for a team that scores 20 points, you shouldn't be abandoning the running game that much and be that shaky in terms of your balance on offense when that's the only amount of points you put up. So the running game is the number one thing that needs to improve. It really, really does. You got to keep on going to it. I do think Austin Kendall improved in terms of my belief in him for the future based on his composure in that game. And defensively, West Virginia's defense could be suspect, at least in those out-of-conference games. They don't really have to deal with that as much in conference in the Big 12. There's a lot more of the pocket passers, a lot more of the gunslingers, a lot more of the open aerial attack type offense. But when they have the read option quarterback, that defense obviously can be a problem. Okay? That just can be an issue when they have a quarterback that can kind of do it all and has the ability to move. This WVU, their win was a win. They got to win. But didn't really feel like one, did it? Kind of after the game. Really didn't feel like one. But it could have been worse, of course. It could have been Michigan and Appalachian State 10 years ago. So they got to win. Could have been Tennessee. Or they lose to a lower classification school. Could have been that. So WVU got to win. Didn't really feel like that, though. But that's fair. They need to improve that run game. They got to keep going to it. And I think you actually got to like what you see from the quarterback in terms of his composure, at least. And maybe the defensive issues they saw in that JMU game, luckily for them, they may not see it as much as the season progresses. But we're going to get more of these Mountaineer shows. Maybe not as often, obviously, as the Steelers, as that's the main point of emphasis here for myself and, of course, for the channel. But more of these WVU shows as we go with the season. And it's football season among us. No matter what flavor you love, high school, pros, or college, it is football season among us. That may mean an end to the balmy weather that I'm still feeling that, though, with the lights on me and having to turn off the AC in the studio to get the sound quality better. But I'm sweating right now. But when you're outside, you're going to be getting that cool breeze, and hopefully we avoid the snow again. And, I will caution everybody yet, though. Don't put those Halloween decorations out just yet. I already saw them in stores. I already told some family and my girlfriend and friends that we're not yet going to go in that direction. It's too early September. Football season's upon us, but not yet ready for the fall holiday decorations yet, even though fall holidays include my favorite among all the holidays, the GOAT, Thanksgiving. Get to that when we get closer to that season. I got a little ornament that I can show off here. It's about Thanksgiving. It's a Thanksgiving spread that I'll put on the Christmas tree. That's how much I love Thanksgiving. But appreciate Thanksgiving to its fullest, but just let it get there yet. We're not yet to a holiday season. But we are in the football season. More Mountaineer shows coming up here, of course. That is for WV Sports Now. WV Sports Now. Already did a mic drop there. This will be another one that will drop some point this week before the Missouri game. Another national TV game, or a national TV game the Mountaineers will have to open up their year. That one going to be on the road against the hungry Missouri team despite an SEC opponent. And want to make sure you go to the family of networks, PittsburghSportsNow.com, PittsburghSoccerNow.com, PittsburghHockeyNow.com, of course, SteelersNow.com, SteelersNow.com. where you can see my shows. There's an AFC North preview from weeks back. I also did a little quarter of the season preview that's going to be there, SteelersNow.com. So SteelersNow.com, where all our Steelers coverage lies, and then now added to the family, WVSportsNow.com. But, again, as they say, a win's a win, even when it really doesn't feel like one.